So hello everybody. I guess we have a nice rest and we have green coffee, so get back to the project and more in concrete to the pilot. Okay. We already know, as in the architecture presentation were explained, which component have the CyberSANE platform, what each component, what does each component, and how interact with each other. Now we are going to see how they work together in real use cases. Okay, for that purpose, we have 3 pilots, and we cover such different industry like solar energy, that the container transportation, and the helper pilot. Well, like we have here like a figure of the 5 main components of the platform: the CyberSANE, LifeNet, Darknet, EVNet, and ShareNet. And what we are doing, we are taking a quick look at how the LifeNet and EVNet detect the attacks. And after, we also take a look at the ShareNet and PrivacyNet, and each pilot will explain in detail how was the infrastructure made and how it was deployed. Okay, so it's good to remember that we use the NIST framework. Okay, so this framework defines the different phase in how to treat an attack. The one is the preparation phase, is already explained in the architecture slots. So all the asset of a company have to be registered in the platform, and then we'll see what is going on when an attack happens. We will start for the next phase after the preparation phase is the detection analysis. And for that phase, we have 2 main components. The LifeNet is one of it. We have, as shown in the picture, 3 different CM, the Gloria, the CD, and the ATCM. And it works on the following way. We have first the detection part. So we have some sensor in each pilot infrastructure. We have, for example, host-based sensor like the Suricata, and net-based sensor as the Suricata, and host-based intrusion system as the OSEC. The Suricata can detect, for example, malicious traffic with illegitimate signature, and as well as they try to download a malicious software. The OSEC is more a level of our application, and he can detect stuff like silent login or this people. With this sensor are fit by to the CM. We explained before, we have different CM in the platform, the Gloria is CM, and after we get these events, we apply correlation rules. I mean, of course, not every anomaly or attack detected by the Suricata or the OSEC might need a corresponding alarm. The CM, the LifeNet, is the one that is doing this job. For example, we will see later in the pilots, what we can see is the Suricata detects some malicious traffic, and the OSEC detect login for unknown user. These events might not be dangerous by his own, but if we receive in a short amount of time, it might need alarm. The alarms can be also low, medium, or high. Okay, we change the component to the EVNets. We're still in the detection on analysis phase, but this is have another view of difference. We have, as you can see, different assets that actually is part of the business, like the Carmen, Giménez, or Holistic. And if we said before that the CM, that the LiveNet, it works with correlation rules, and it correlates the events that come to the server and create an alarm. This work by compare the normal traffic, let's say spectral traffic, with the real one. For example, we can go in detail how the ARES work. The first step we have to do is work with the stock flow. The stock flow is one part of the ARES, which capture all the traffic in a normal traffic. It's important to be the traffic without any attacks, because it's the one that we are using to compare. Then deep learning algorithm is trained to be to develop, let's say, how the standard traffic might be, and the software is real time sending the ARES core all the traffic of a net, and is comparing with the expected one. So in case something different, I mean, a strange amount of packets, or a large amount of bytes, or even the protocol uses are not the one that we expected, it's create an alarm, and it sends to the platform as well. We also have in IRITNet another tool that employs a set of machine learning algorithms, and it can find inconsistencies like a denial of service. We'll see later, for example, in the pilot, that using this deep learning and machine learning, we will be able to identify and create an alarm for example, unknown suspicious IP, and send to the platform. And after this phase, we come to a containment phase. For that purpose, we have the done install. This is already explained in the architecture presentation, but we will see some examples. For example, in one pilot, we will check the public IP against a list of blackmailed IP. We will also use the event registry to search for a specific word and look specific information for the attack. And we also have the possibility to scan all the relevant articles in the deep web in order to gather more information. And last but not least, when the attack is detected and contained, we reach the post-incident activity, and we have the ShareNet, which provides the information to the local set, and it also prevents another infrastructure to prevent all damage to other partners. Of course, all the info is the privacy net provides the necessary anonymization for all the info that we are sharing with the platform. This is quite a general view of which how the components works in detail. And now we will see all the pilots and the exact real cases that we have proved. So I think now, like, Pablo is taking the lead, and we'll show you. We continue the presentation. If you have any question, I will be more than happy to answer it in the question and answer period. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Guillermo. As Guillermo said, we have seen the tools that we have developed during the project, and now we are going to see how we apply them in the pilot. But let me start introducing briefly the pilots. These were the pilot objectives that we defined at the beginning of the project. Our main objective was to raise awareness of the importance of cybersecurity for all the companies, but mainly for critical infrastructure. And also we want to help these operators to detect and anticipate all kind or most of the cyber attacks in their infrastructures. Of course, we wanted also to assess and validate the different components that we have developed during the project, always in real environments. And how we did it? We started defining some scenarios. We tried to do realistic scenarios based on the infrastructures for the 3 pilots. Then we developed and deployed the infrastructure and the different components of the project. And finally, we ran the pilot execution in real systems with simulated attacks due security reasons. As mentioned before, these are the 3 pilots of the project that we had during this year. The first one is the container cargo transportation. We ran it in February. The solar energy production, storage, and distribution that we performed in April. And the third one, the cyber threat identification and communication in healthcare in the past July. You can find here the links of all the information about the event and also the recordings of the real-time execution of the pilots. Then I guess that you could be interested in after this presentation. So now let's start with the first one, the container transportation service. This pilot is based in one of the processes that we have in most of the ports, which is the verified gross mass, the VGM. This is an international regulation, which requires this certificate for all the containers before they are loaded on a vessel. In our case, in Valencia, we have an electronic platform called Compeso, which is used to exchange all kinds of information between the actors participating in this process. You can see here the high-level view of this platform with the different assets and also the actors that are participating. On one side, we have the provider of the solution, in this case represented by a technician, and on the other side, we have the companies participating, freight forwarders, road hauliers, and the scale operator. You can see here the real deployment that we prepared for this pilot. On this side, we can see the electronic platform, the Compeso, that I just mentioned, and the different components that we deployed for preparing the pilot. We have some of them deployed on premises. You can see that Giménez is directly installed in the main server of the platform, and Lightsource, which is deployed with a mirror, which is sending all the required information. And then on the side, on the cloud, we have the main CyberSANE platform, which contains the other 3 components: Darknet, Cellnet, and Privacy. With this infrastructure, we defined 2 different scenarios. Here you can see the first one, which is the fraudulent modification of a container weight scenario. In this scenario, the attackers wanted to access the VGM services in order to modify a container weight. For instance, because they want to hide a big explosive artifact, avoiding some controls. For that, they are going to install a malware in the VGM technician laptop through a spoofing email that the technician is going to open and install that malware. In this case, once the malware is installed, it's going to be detected by LiveNet, as Guillermo mentioned before. Once we have all the details of this incident, we can look for more information. In this case, it was a Turla malware, so we can search what kind of malware is it, where it comes, and additional information. And later on, we can share all the details of the incident. In case there is confidential information that we cannot share with other entities, we can hide it using privacy. Then the attackers are going to use the access to that compromised laptop to hack the access to the BGM server. For that, they are going to use an exploit, and that is going also to be detected by Light. Finally, the attackers are going to have access to the server, and they are able to modify the container weight. In this case, as they are accessing from an unknown IP, HighLiveNet is going to detect it. In the second scenario, it's called disable BGM services. The attackers are going to disable directly all the services with causing an internal error. For that, they are going to get the credentials from the dark web, because a discounted employee is going to publish them in a forum. In this case, we have our component from darknet, which is monitoring continuously email breaches. So once that credentials are published, it's going to be detected and notified to the security agent. But when the attackers use that login, Lightning is going to detect that the IP that they are using is in a blacklist, so it's going to raise an incident. And also, HighLiveNet is going to detect that that IP is unknown. As before, we can share the incident with ShareNet with other infrastructure. Then the attackers are in the server, and they are able to disable some of the services. In this case, Lightnet is monitoring all the main services of the server, so it's going to detect that some of them are shut down and can notify. Finally, the attackers want to remove all the evidences of the attack, so they are going to delete some of the log files. And Lightnet there are relevant files. These files are being monitored by Lightnet, so it's going to detect that has been deleted. These are the two pilots. If you are interested in the real demonstration of them, as I said before, you can see with the link that I previously showed. Before finishing, I'm going to show you some challenges and lessons learned. Our first challenge was the definition of the scenarios. We had several workshops with the partners of the project and external stakeholders in order to define vulnerabilities that would be applied to the or real infrastructure, cyber attacks, in order to define a realistic scenario. Another challenge that is quite common is executing demonstration in critical infrastructures. It's not easy to get the proper permissions to access to this infrastructure, or even getting a twin of it. And in addition, we have the problem of the data. Usually, these kind of infrastructures are managing sensitive or confidential data that cannot be used or need to be hidden somehow. Finally, this was the first pilot of the project. So we used the first alpha version of the platform, and we have some integration issues, as you have seen before. We are using different tools from different providers, so there were some problems, but everything was solved before the first pilot. And as lesson learned, we realized during the project the importance of cyber attacks on transport companies, and because it could have a big impact on them, but even it could affect the country economy. We saw also that the importance of using powerful and also updated tools in order to protect that critical infrastructures. And finally, something that we get from the feedback in the event, because some of the attendees were very interested in the sharing capabilities of the platform, because usually cyber attacks are tried to be hidden if they are not so big to be difficult to hide them, and you are not aware of them. And if you share this kind of information with other companies in your environment, you could avoid new cyber attacks. So that's all for this first pilot. Now my colleague Robert is going to present the next one.
Thank you. My name is Robert Bordianu. I work for Lightsource Labs in Ireland, and we are the energy pilot. We specifically design a product that sits in the residential home market to manage energy at the edge. Basically, the overview of the system would be a solar panel, battery, inverter, and a smart hub from our side to manage and optimize energy usage within the home. This includes not only what you produce, but maybe also charging from the grid, exporting that to the grid, depending on times of day tariffs and other scenarios that we can encounter and optimize the energy consumption of the home. For this purpose, I'm going to spend just a minute on the diagram down below. So it includes a couple of different group of assets. You obviously have the PV related assets, which is solar panel, inverter, energy meter, and you can also have other type of assets, white goods like fridges, dishwasher, washing machine, from the heating side, water pump. All of that information can be aggregated and controlled and managed within the Lightsource home gateway called Tribe. And that gateway is connected with a cloud broker over the internet to not only publish the information in terms of how much you consumed, exported, imported, but also allow the homeowner to do controls like turn on and off different appliances within the home. So for the context of CyberSANE, we're going to focus on a subset of this, which is the energy meter itself at layer 1, the hub at layer 2, and the Iot broker at layer 3 to see how the scenarios could be, how the scenarios have been demonstrated. So on the left-hand side, we have the homeowner Wi-Fi network per se. We actually deployed the physical gateway within a home network. We deployed an energy meter within that network itself, and we allowed the CyberSANE partners to install the tools required to intercept and implement the pilot itself. On the middle side, we have the Iot broker, and within the Iot broker are all of the systems, production-like systems that we deployed in AWS for this pilot. They're real assets we usually use in production, just with the anonymized data, so we don't have customer-sensitive information. On that environment, we also have CyberSANE tools for anomaly detection, encrypted traffic analysis, and all of this live net-related tools feed into the CyberSANE platform alongside the other tools like ShareNet, PrivacyNet, and DynNet. So for scenarios, like I said, we have a layered system. We start with the layer 1, which focuses on the energy meter readings coming into the gateway. Scenario number 2 is focused on the actual gateway itself and trying to exploit that. And scenario number 3 is focused on the cloud infrastructure to look at the vulnerabilities in the software we're running and detect live detection of TLS traffic, malicious TLS traffic. For the first scenario, recording inaccurate readings, we're basically simulating a man-in-the-middle attack of someone actually being on the homeowner Wi-Fi network. He's trying to block the data coming in from the energy meter and insert inaccurate readings to spoof the energy consumption of the actual home. On the agent itself, we have, on the Tribe Hub, we have an agent that actually detects this anomaly data coming in and raises an incident into the platform. That incident notifies the security expert, which can go and investigate and analyze what is happening on the actual gateway. The findings can be shared anonymous through the ShareNet component. For the unprivileged access to the hub, we have a scenario where the attacker wants to gain access to the Tribe Hub. We've seen multiple pieces of articles in the news, like IoT cameras getting exploited, not necessarily breaking their functionality, but taking advantage of the compute capacity to launch all sorts of other attacks like denial of service or crypto mining, just using the resource for things that it's not supposed to be used. In this scenario, The attacker gains unprivileged access, tries to gain unprivileged access to the gateway. Once inside the gateway, it will launch malware to communicate with the command and control server. And at this point, LiveNet detects the communication with the command and control, and the other component of LiveNet detects the log deletion. A notification is raised in the CyberSANE platform. A security expert from Lightsource Labs is able to go into the try box, do a little bit of analysis to figure out what processes are running that are not supposed to, and try to recover the gateway in the accurate state that it's supposed to be in. I think here we can also mention the public IP of the gateway that can show up in the list in the dark web. For the third scenario, we're looking at layer 3, the cloud broker itself. And this particular scenario is looking to detect suspicious signatures in the TLS traffic. So if someone is trying to exploit our Entity Broker service, which is the service that receives communication from edge gateways to the cloud, then with the tools installed on this service, we are able to analyze encrypted TLS traffic and detect any suspicious signatures within the communication. Any suspicious event is raised within the CyberSANE platform, and the notification again is sent to the security expert, which goes in, analyzes, and maybe it needs to do a security patch update for the MTTD broker version, and we can share the events anonymously with the rest of the CyberSANE platform users. Now, for the challenge, I think here, initially we had to sit down and say, okay, we can gather all of this information from all of these assets on the edge. What can we actually install, and what are the appropriate things to focus on to reduce our scope? And that's why we selected the energy meter, the gateway, and the broker to just show an attack on each different type of asset. The demonstration in the critical infrastructure, the difficulty of replication wasn't as high, but obviously we had to deploy a private broker with the same assets we run in production. There was a little bit of anonymized data, the actual setup of the hardware itself, making sure the partners can gain access and they can install and configure the tools on every component within our system. Being the second pilot and having this mix of hardware and software, there's some integration. Not necessarily difficulties, but it takes a little bit longer to set up the proper tools and making sure that everything works as it should. For the lessons learned, I think here the main point is, although we are looking to protect individual homes, the fact that we can import, export on demand in different regions makes this environment really important, because we can affect the load within the network in that particular grid region. So if in a city we're asked to export some energy to balance the grid or import it, obviously having detection tools to say that we are not having compromised assets within that region helps us to provide a reliable service. And then we obviously seen the importance of the CyberSANE project, how these tools really raise accurate alerts and near real-time alerts, so we can immediately go and investigate an incident that was raised, and has through the dashboard that you've seen earlier, steps that we can define for our security experts to take appropriate actions to remediate these incidents and be able to report and recover to a common good state. So overall, it was very good for us, and very the platform itself is very useful. I think the next and last pilot is the healthcare pilot. So I'm going to hand it over.
Yes.
Okay, my name is Andrius. I'm representing here Klinikum Nürnberg. It's a big hospital, municipal hospital in Nürnberg, which is a critical infrastructure too. With regard to other presentation, other pilots like transportation and energy sector. So the healthcare sector has its critical infrastructure too, and this infrastructure should be then secure, especially if we're talking about patient data. This pilot focused on hospital and typical environment in a hospital. I think if we go back in the history of digitalization of healthcare, it started somewhere in such departments like radiology. So that's why we are focusing on the medical devices like ultrasonic device or could be a MRI system or a computer tomograph and so on. And the systems are used not only in a diagnostic but in a therapy too. If it's intervention in the operation room, so such systems like CT used are too, or ultrasound machines to diagnose and to intervene in a real time. So that's why it's very important to have isolated medical devices in terms of they are connected with information system in a hospital, but they have to be very good protected. And another thing is that it's typical that external and internal technicians who are maintaining such systems, usually they are from different companies. They are bringing their laptops, so their possibility to connect for the maintenance of such devices, and sometimes it ended in the critical issue that something is jumping from their laptop to, for example, a medical device, and then spreads in the network. So this is about this pilot, and just to once again summarize what I had just called. We have an ultrasound machine. Here is visualized, and we have a connection with a laptop, for example, of service technician, and there is a server which could be then used for a denial of service attack, just in this simulated environment. And we have some imaging and findings systems which are typically used for storing images, like PAC system, picture archiving and communication system. And we have an on the application layer of network connection, like a standardized DICOM messaging. So this was the deployment of the health pilot. We had some components, some subcomponents of LiveNet and HyberNet installed on nearby the system where the imaging data are stored. At attacker server, there was a Log4j stored, which was in the past had a critical issue for managing information, which were then used for the malware spread. So this is a setting, the whole for the health pilot deployment. Naturally, it's not a full typical setting of infrastructure, IT infrastructure in the hospital. With perhaps we are missing here communication service, perhaps we are missing another parts like EMR, electronic medical record, and so on. But it's not crucial for a health pilot, because I think the most important thing is the play between the hardware and the software. And in this case, we have a medical device like ultrasound device and the information system like storing for imaging data, so like patient data. And then we have a connection to another to a CyberSANE platform with another components too. We we defined 3 scenarios which are rather typical for healthcare, or especially for hospital environment. It's about external attack due to an infected notebook. It's about malware spreads into local network, perhaps like a denial of service attack. And naturally, what I will talk about later, it's a communication with other hospitals about threat, because the hospitals are typically interconnected due to enable the patient journey. So from the perhaps physician, and then to one hospital to another hospital, rehabilitation, and so on. So speaking about first scenario, we have a service technician who are maintaining a medical device, let's say as an ultrasound device, and accidentally affects it. What does it mean? So the medical device is infected by malware. Perhaps the malware on a technician notebook are sending a HTTP request, and through this request passes to the Log4j component, which is installed on that medical device. For what kind of reason could it be? It could be just to have an operation of to maintain to see the operation of a medical device. And afterwards, malware attempts to contact to a kind of command and control server. It's naturally a kind of, because we have some affected server in the environment, and this perhaps the instance of Log4j is outdated, and that's why we have a potential issue, a critical issue. So and when the malware is detected and identified, in this case we are aligning of for LiveNet, it detects and exploits, and linked with a Hibernate component. In the second scenario, we focus on a malware which spreads through a LAN of infrastructure, and perhaps malware contains some script for denial of service kind of, and for spreading, it means that it starts to attack many servers who are in the infrastructure of the hospital, and that means some hospital like DICOM server, earlier mentioned like PACS DICOM server. It's not available. That means it's not available for not only for one ultrasound device, but for all devices which are interconnected with this PACS server. Then the malware is localized using a Hibernate subcomponent, and at the end it's interconnected with information with LiveNet. So the security incident is created in cyber at LiveNet, and the local team of SOC is informed. And the third scenario is, I think, the most crucial scenario is what is happening next. So if the malware already localized and already identified, I think there were then starting working some components which are already existing for isolating the virtual private network and virtual networks within the infrastructure of hospital and so on. But it's very important that this hospital in a very rapid way contacts to other hospital and try to inform that there is some issue and they have to be protecting. Even it could be that they cut the internet connection so they can be isolated. That means that the computer emergency response team should be notified. So the local computer emergency response team, and then this free information should be exchanged with hospitals. This part is perfectly managed by privacy net anonymization information. And when we have the third step in this case, we have a share net. So we share this incident with our hospital so they can be ready for attack and starts the needed steps to isolate the cyber attack. So what kind of challenges we had at hospital pilot? Similar to our pilots, we had difficulty to dealing with realistic scenarios. So the most realistic scenario was, which I just presented. It's about communication between medical device and the information system where our patient data are stored. I think it's a typical example which can be found not only at hospital, but at some small clinics and perhaps at home care and so on. And then another thing is the difficulties to replicate infrastructure. So to replicate within an infrastructure of hospital, it was not possible. It's not like a playground, so you have to really isolate it. So the simulated system was completely separated from the hospital infrastructure for this pilot, and naturally to make it more realistic this pilot, we were cleaning the data for the pilot. That means the sensitive data where patient data could be inside. So it was completely anonymized, partly synthesized data for the pilot. And perhaps one more challenge was to integrate with some CyberSANE other components, but at the end it was then solved. So the most important lessons learned, if we look at the German landscape of all hospitals, so not only small hospitals, but the big hospitals like critical hospitals, it's about to communicate in a very rapid way about a cyber attack. And for this, there is a official institution, German Federal Office of Security in Information Technology, which should be informed very fast. And afterward, this institution works into this data and spreads it to our hospital. In this case, it could take several days until this information reaches our hospital. So that we saw in this pilot is definitely the big advantage of CyberSANE platform, and this is a very promising if we can think about a cluster interconnected, so several hospitals in one region. So in this way, the information exchange through CyberSANE would be very rapid and will deliver the interest of that. And then the second thing is if every hospital, if we stay at health, so like in the health industry, if every hospital tries to use a CyberSANE platform, that means we're talking about harmonization, because the language which typical information security officers were talking about, they will be aligned regarding the attack patterns, perhaps special anomalies, and so on. So these are the two promising issues and advantages of CyberSANE platform. I think I've done. Thank you.
Okay. Okay. So, hello everybody. I am Manos Athanatos. I work at Ford. We have a number of roles in CyberSANE, but I'm here to talk to you about the work that we have done concerning the standardization activities of the project. So, as we all know, standardization and standard creation is a tedious process that takes many years, so it's not you are not able to do it in the context of just one project. So we mostly focus on creating liaisons and interactions with other standardization bodies so that to provide our view of the standards and what should be out there concerning the critical infrastructure security. And we created some strong bonds that led to participation from our part in some of the standardization bodies and the creation of future standards we will see in the next slides. Fourth led the activities for the standardization, but of course all partners, especially the ones from the industry, they contributed and provided even more impact through their activities. So, what was the methodology that we followed throughout the CyberSANE project? First of all, we monitor all the standardization activities from every partner of the project. Then we monitored standards, cybersecurity standards that are out there and how they correlate with our project and specifically with every work package. And we identified and create connections and bonds with external stakeholders, either ENISA or First.org or Oasis Open. And also, we were part of the European Cluster for Security Critical Transactions that was created by FinSec project, and it included a number of projects, and we participated in several events there. All this information was tracked throughout the duration of the project and provided feedback that enhanced the final output of CyberSANE. So we participated in a number of events with a lot of stakeholders that create standards and are policymakers. Here we can see just a number of them. We identified more than 20 stakeholders, including 10 European projects, and we had events with every one of them and discussions that led back to enhancing the final output of CyberSANE. We monitor the European Observatory for ICT standardizations for news and relevant standards. A partner from CyberSANE was part of this, CNR, to be more specific. Also, as I said earlier, we were part of the European Cluster for Security Critical Infrastructures. We participated in 2 workshops. And we also presented a demo there, and we assisted in the second workshop, sharing a number of sessions. And as I said earlier, a number of partners is already active and involved with different standardization bodies like the ISO, the EXO, Fertitorg, ENISA, and more. So what were the key results? First of all, we initiated a collaboration between all the projects that were funded under the same call as CyberSANE. We hosted the first joint workshop of standardization with almost 40 participants. And all the projects that were involved was GARD, C4IoT, Caramel, Sapan, Simardi, Socrates. And in this first workshop, we had an insightful keynote by Dr. Vasilis Mavroidis from the University of Oslo, who is also part of Oasis Open, and he is behind a number of standards that you are aware, and led to a fruitful collaboration and participation to the Cacao Technical Committee of Oasis Open. And through the discussions we had from the first workshop, all projects came together. We created some set files and exchanged ideas on what we would like to see the future standards to include in cyber events sharing and other aspects of cybersecurity. There was a strong drive towards the playbooks, the cybersecurity playbooks, and a number of projects participated in that effort. Then, after a year or so, we had the second workshop that was even more impactful, with more than 50 participants, with keynotes from ENISA, from Concordia project, from Concordia again, from Stand ICT, how they was able to interface the cybersecurity functions. So between the Open C2 standard and the I2 NSF, as I told you earlier, the Sapan project had a joint effort with Open Oasis on sharing cybersecurity playbooks. So this was also presented, and of course, a presentation from Alviro Patsopoulou, who was also actively in discussions with us on how to push the standard in the Horizon projects. So what are the key results that we achieved through our activities? First of all, our partners from another project, from Japan, through the first workshop that we were behind of, they were able to engage with the Oasis Open Standardization body, and they created produced results in relation to Cacao standard on how to share Cacao playbooks using NISP. So this was our first result. Then a number of partners like PDMFC, Maggioli, Ubitech, they followed NISP standards in a number of different work packages, and we were able to exploit these standards and enhance all the activities and the creation of the final platform. Fourth, participated after the first and the second workshop and is now a voting member of the Cacao Technical Committee that is developing the playbook standards. Also, we are part now of the ENISA ad hoc working group on security operation centers, again in the area of cybersecurity playbooks. We are also part and monitoring the CTI Technical Committee and the TAC Technical Committee. The CTI Committee is the one that has developed the STIX and TAXI standard. And we are also following the first.org and the specific standards that were also exploited in CyberSANE, like the CPSS and the EPSS. And all the standards that were used during the lifetime of the project is shown here. So does this? No, okay, I have to. Okay. So this was in a nutshell what we have done in terms of totalization within CyberSANE. As I said earlier, the way to implement and create new standard, it's a very tedious and time-consuming work that cannot be done in the context of one Horizon project. This is also what we were told by the experts that were invited, and we had the discussions. But we feel that we were able to let's say put a small stone in the creation of the future standards, and at least in my point of view, this is really important. So that is it from my side. I wanted to keep it short. I don't know if it was too short. I am here for any questions or anything. So thank you. What's are we done?
Just a Q&A. Yeah, so you can ask online as well. If there are any questions regarding the presentations that we did this afternoon, sure, fire ahead. We'll answer the rest as we can.
I have a question regarding the healthcare pilot.
Yeah.
So my question is, how or what data did you collected to actually detect the anomaly, detect the incidents? Because the specific healthcare systems like ultrasound or this well, specific devices, they are notorious being say forensic black holes, because you cannot install anything on it because of a breaching contract, and it causes a lot of problems in hospitals. So how did you circumvent this?
So we used some kind of network, not some kind, very complete. We used in the real infrastructure, on the real infrastructure, we used Wireshark. It's a network analysis tool, and you can analyze the protocols which are sent between systems. So yeah, you are right. We couldn't. We can emulate. We emulated the ultrasound device, but it was not possible there to install the real DICOM data and so on. And it was not the case. We don't need to send the imaging devices. It's interesting only the DICOM standard DICOM messaging, which can be seen through such analysis tools like Wireshark. And then we clean this data, because there are, if you attract 5 minutes, you have a big amount of the data. So we clean this data only to the specific data which are relevant for this pilot, and then we play it in the simulated environment. Yeah.
So yeah, we created a simulated version of what we had physically, and to make it more credible, we took the traffic from the real device and replayed it on the simulator device, so that you would see at least the same device, the same type of communication, the same packets. It was as real as possible that we could make it.
So the detection and the monitoring is done on network level, and you don't go and you don't even plan to go on the host level, especially for this kind of devices.
Yeah, as you were saying, we don't have the rights. We don't have the licensing permission to go in and install agents on those devices to do host detection. So the best next thing that we can do, that we can hope to do, is do it on the network, or do it on the systems that the device is talking to. So we cannot do it on the device itself. It's unfortunately, hopefully in the near future, we should have like the equivalent of open source to those devices, where at least open firmware or open access, so that you could I'm not holding my breath.
So I don't think we ever in this case.
But I agree with you because it's the thing is, I think if we look at the systems like computer tomograph or MRI, so they are completely processed. So, but it still can be the same situation as we demonstrated, because it doesn't matter what's happening within the system. It's about what the system communicates. So if it's affected, what is communicated on the network. And so there are some studies which show that the DICOM protocol could be infected, manipulated, and this information, if it lands sends to a imaging repository, it could violate the system. Yeah.
Yes. So well, that was my question. What was the strategy for this closed systems? So if you approach them in some specific way. Thank you.
Any more questions? Anybody online has any question?
Not for now.
Okay, so I think it's a wrap.
I have
No?
a question.
Sorry, Rob.
What are the next steps for the project? What's the plan?
I got the liberty to say while I'm being recorded. I'll talk to you offline about that.
We have a final review coming up.
I invoked the 5th. I talked to you offline about that. Sure, yeah. Next steps, we need to prepare the final deliverables that are due this month. And then we have the final review that we've prepared. Okay, so that's a wrap. Thanks everybody for coming. Hopefully to see you all next time. Bye everyone.